The first time I heard a ghost speak, it wasn't a scream. It was a single word, soft as breath, coming from an empty hallway where no one could be standing. The kind of word that makes your stomach drop because it knows your name, or your guilt, or your secret. For people, for nights, for voices that only spoke once and never had to speak again. If you enjoy true horror stories whispered from the dark, don't forget to subscribe. If you dare, welcome to Mr. BlackWhisper. I used to think the dead were loud in movies because silence is hard to sell. In real life, the dead are quiet because they don't need your attention. They just need you to understand. The first story happened when I took a night security job at a small outpatient clinic that had been converted from an old residential building. It wasn't famous. It wasn't haunted tour material. It was a place people came for minor surgeries, checkups, and private relief, then left without looking back. At night, the building felt like a sealed mouth. The waiting room chairs sat in neat rows like teeth. The automatic doors didn't breathe. The air conditioning ran low and constant, cold enough that the skin around your knuckles tightened. My job was simple. Walk the halls, check the locks, sign a log every hour, and make sure nobody broke in. The cameras covered the entrances, but there were dead spots inside. The previous guard told me the dead spots were just old wiring. He didn't say anything else, but he didn't have to. People always leave their fear in the pauses. On my third shift, around 2:20 a.m., I made my rounds past the exam rooms. Everything was clean. Everything smelled faintly of disinfectant and plastic. The kind of clean that makes you think of needles and paperwork. Halfway down the hall, I noticed the light under one door. Room 6 was supposed to be dark. I'd checked it at midnight. I'd checked it at 1. The clinics locked these rooms because they kept medication inside. The door was shut, but a thin, perfect line of white light bled across the floor like a fresh cut. My first thought was simple. Someone forgot to turn it off. My second thought followed right behind. Nobody should be here. I walked closer, slow, trying to hear anything. No footsteps, no movement. Just the soft hum of fluorescent light through a closed door. I put my hand on the knob. The metal was cold in a way that felt intentional. I twisted, expecting resistance. The door opened without a sound. The room was lit, but empty. The exam chair sat reclined, like someone had just stood up from it. A paper sheet lay half enrolled, wrinkled, as if it had been pressed by weight. The cabinets were closed. The sink was dry. The mirror above it reflected me in that harsh light, making my face look pale and unfinished. I stepped inside and looked for the switch. It was already down. Off. The light should not have been on. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the ceiling panels, searching for the simplest explanation. Something about the ballast. A power surge? A malfunction? Anything that didn't require the thought growing heavier in my chest. Then I heard it right behind my left ear, as if someone leaned close enough to share warmth. Not a sentence, not a warning. Just one word, spoken with tired certainty. Leave. The voice wasn't theatrical. It didn't echo. It didn't hiss. It sounded like a person who had run out of reasons to explain. My body reacted before my mind did. My skin tightened. My stomach turned. I didn't spin around like in movies. I didn't shout. I just moved, like something inside me understood that turning too fast would make it worse. I backed out of the room, never looking away from that chair, that crumpled paper, that impossible light. In the hallway, the line of light disappeared as the door drifted shut. The moment the latch clicked, the room went dark. I finished my shift in the lobby with every light on, my back pressed to a wall, watching the hallway like it might open its mouth again. In the morning, the supervisor laughed when I told him, he said the building was old. He said the lights flickered sometimes. He said I was imagining things because nights get to you. But he couldn't explain why my logbook entry for 2:30 a.m. had the word "leave" written across it in my handwriting, in letters I didn't remember writing. I quit that job after a week, and I never walked past room 6 again without feeling like I was being politely forgiven for not listening sooner. The second story came from a friend who worked overnight in a small hospital records department. The kind tucked away in the basement where the air is warm from machines and the walls are too white to feel honest. He wasn't a ghost believer. He was a numbers person. He trusted systems, not stories. His job was to digitize old files, admission forms, discharge summaries, death certificates stacked in boxes that smelled like paper rot and forgotten time. Some nights, he'd be alone. Other nights, a nurse would pass through to grab something from storage and nod without stopping. One winter night, the building lost power for a few seconds. The backup generators kicked in, but the basement lights dimmed into a weak yellow glow that made corners look deeper than they should. When the computers restarted, one of them opened a file on its own. Not a recent record, not something he'd been scanning. An old admission note from years ago, typed in a blunt, clinical font. He told me he stared at it because it felt like the computer was trying to show him something. The patient name was familiar. It was his mother's maiden name. He hadn't typed it. He hadn't searched it. Hadn't even said it out loud in years. Before he could move, the printer beside him began to feed paper. It shouldn't have. It wasn't connected to that computer anymore. It had been broken for months, waiting on a part the hospital never prioritized. But it printed one page anyway, slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. He walked over and took it, still warm. It wasn't a form. It was a single line of text, centered. "Check the locker." He said his hands shook so badly he nearly tore the paper. He told himself it was a prank, a coworker messing with him, a glitch, some weird chain of events. Anything but what his skin already knew. In the basement hallway, there were old lockers, rusted, dented, painted the same beige as everything else. Most were jammed shut. Some had been pried open and left yawning. One still had a lock on it, a cheap combination kind. He tried it anyway, out of spite, out of fear, out of that awful need to prove you're not being watched. The lock opened with the first combination, he guessed. His birthday. Inside the locker sat a small paper bag. In the bag was a cassette tape. A label had been handwritten across it in faded ink. The letters careful but uneven. For him, he didn't take it home. He didn't play it. He said he held it like it could burn him through the plastic. He took it upstairs to the nurse's station and asked if anyone knew where it came from. The nurse on duty glanced at it, then went very still. She told him the hospital used to record certain calls decades ago. Rare, but it happened. She told him there was a woman who used to call late at night from a payphone near the old east entrance. A woman who begged the staff to please tell my son something, always the same son, always the same name. The name on the tape label was his. He asked the nurse what the woman wanted to tell him. The nurse didn't answer. She just looked down the hallway, like she expected someone to be standing there listening. Then, from behind him, from the basement stairwell that should have been empty, came a voice, thin, strained, but unmistakably human. Not a sentence. Just one word. Play. He said it like a command, but not cruel. More like desperate. My friend dropped the tape. It cracked on the tile, the little reels visible through the split. He didn't pick it up. He walked out of the hospital in the middle of his shift and never came back. Months later, he told me he still dreams of that locker door opening and something waiting inside that he refused to hear. He told me the worst part isn't wondering what the tape said. The worst part is realizing it only had to ask once. The third story was mine again, on a highway that runs flat and empty through farmland where the darkness feels clean until it doesn't. I was driving home after visiting my father's grave. It was late, colder than the forecast promised. The kind of cold that sneaks into the car through the vents even when they're shut. There weren't many cars, just occasional headlights crossing in the distance like faraway ships. At around 11:47 p.m., I passed an exit I didn't recognize and saw a figure on the shoulder. A woman standing too still. No bag, no waving. Just facing the road, as if she was waiting for one specific car. I kept driving. Then I saw her again. Same posture, same place in my headlights. Impossible. I checked my mirrors. There was no one behind me. I told myself it was my brain looping the image. Fatigue, grief. The way your mind stutters when zitters, laves tea, and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. I checked my mirrors, more sleeved care. There was sitters, there was sitters. There was zitters, sitters, my sitters. My sitters, my sitters, my sitters. My sitters, my sitters. Why my sitters? My me with sitter. We have lev. I sit to sell it. By now I can see unlovely me it. To me said it's see it to be I sit it sit it's by to the bike to kathisa by it's to kawabasa to lit kabik get to the cystic heat You've been staring at stone names all afternoon. I drove faster. A few minutes later, I saw her a third time. Closer to the lane now, her face angled toward my windshield as if she could see me behind the glass. My chest tightened. I gripped the wheel so hard, my fingers went numb. I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to acknowledge her. I wanted to reach home and lock my door and pretend the world ended at my driveway. I passed her, breath held. And that's when the radio turned on by itself. Not static, not a station. Just a clear, low voice coming through the speakers like the car had been waiting for it. Don't look. One word. But it carried a weight that felt older than the highway. Older than my fear. I froze. My eyes were already drawn to the mirror, to the instinctive need to see what you're running from. I fought it. I stared straight ahead, heart battering my ribs, and kept my hands locked at 10 and 2 like it could keep reality aligned. In my peripheral vision, I saw movement. A shadow on the passenger side window. A shape keeping pace. I didn't turn. I didn't blink. I drove until the highway lights returned and the world gained edges again. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the radio was off. The car was silent. My breath came out in shaky clouds. In the morning, I checked the dashcam footage. There was no woman. There was no figure on the shoulder. But at 11:47 p.m., the audio captured one word so faint, you had to turn the volume all the way up. So close, it sounded like it was whispered from inside the car. Don't. And behind that whisper, layered under it like a second breath, there was the soft sound of nails sliding along glass. The fourth story is the one that made me stop telling myself these were coincidences. It came from my neighbor, an older man who lived alone after his wife died. He wasn't dramatic. He was the kind of quiet that comes from a life spent working with tools, solving problems you can touch. One night, his smoke alarm chirped. That small, sharp sound that never feels urgent until it becomes the only thing you can hear. He got up, irritated, and went to replace the battery. He stood on a chair in the hallway, reaching up, twisting the plastic cover. When he pulled it down, a single Polaroid photo fell out. He didn't own a Polaroid camera. He told me he stared at it, confused, because it didn't make sense for a photo to be inside the smoke alarm housing. He turned it over. No writing. No date. The photo showed his hallway. His exact hallway. Same framed picture on the wall. Same runner rug. Same scratch near the baseboard. But in the photo, the hallway was darker, as if the lights were off. And at the far end, near the closed bedroom door, there was a shape. Not a clear figure. Not a face. Just a deeper piece of dark, in the dark, standing where no one should be standing. He felt sick, he said. like the house had taken a picture of itself and hidden it where he'd eventually be forced to find it. He put the smoke alarm back, hands shaking. He turned on every light. He checked every room, every closet. Nothing. He tried to laugh at himself. Then his landline rang. He hadn't used it in years. Mostly spam. Mostly silence. He answered anyway because the phone had already dragged his heartbeat into his throat. At first, there was only quiet breathing. Then, in a voice so familiar it made his knees weaken, he heard his wife say one word. Behind. He told me he didn't turn around. He told me he dropped the phone and walked out of the house in his slippers, leaving the lights blazing, leaving the front door unlocked, leaving that Polaroid on the hallway floor like a warning sign. He spent the night in his car at the end of the street, watching his own windows, waiting for something to move. In the morning, he went back inside. The Polaroid was gone. The smoke alarm cover was closed, and the his bedroom door was open, just a few inches, like someone had been standing there listening, and finally decided it didn't need to hide anymore. He moved out a month later. He said he didn't leave because he was scared of a ghost. He left because he couldn't stop thinking about how careful that voice was. It didn't beg. It didn't threaten. It spoke once, and it was enough. Some voices don't come to comfort you. Some voices don't come to scare you. Some voices come to prove that the silence in your life has been listening the whole time. And when it finally speaks, you realize it never needed to say more.